Alright, Schlockmeister fans, we're going to go back to an old beta movie of mine from this 50 movie pack drive-in movie classics. It's called Spare Parts, otherwise known as FLEISCH. Let's check it out. Our movie starts with a wedding between Monica and Bill.
Come on. Hey, Mike. Ich liebe dich. How much is anyone worth? What is the value of a life? Man, does a general bring more than a private can? What he is or is not.
So on their honeymoon, they end up at some rundown hotel in Las Cruces, New Mexico.
Why not? A double for $7.50 a night and free coffee.
Well, that is a good deal. The proprietor of the hotel brings them some coffee.
Only 3 weeks ago. We are strictly on the level.
Oh, why I knew that the minute you two kids drove in here. Oh, you can always tell.
Well, she leaves and they start to do what newlyweds do. But she doesn't just leave. She makes a phone call. These two continue to roll around for a while. I can't show you a whole lot of what they do. At one point they run outside and frolic in the desert when an ambulance shows up. They briefly get separated and our ambulance drivers kidnap Mike.
A joke's a joke, but...
They try to find Monica too, but she manages to elude them.
John, disappeared from the face of the earth.
She goes back to the hotel to get some help.
What are you calling?
The police, of course. I'm calling the police.
She goes back to their room.
Where's the car? We haven't told the car.
The car is gone. All their stuff is gone. She's confused. The woman claims to not have any knowledge of them ever being there.
What do you think you're doing?
This is our cabin.
What? Why, we ain't rented out number 2 in weeks. We've got to get it ready for the tourist season.
She runs out to the highway and flags down a trucker. Bad picture quality, but trust me, she got in the cab. She tells him the story and finds it hard to believe.
You're rich, huh? Got a little action in the cab out there.
No use denying it. We saw her looking out the cab window.
Truck stop.
Well, man, she's the daughter of an old friend of mine, but who are you? On the radio?
Ambulance driver shows up.
The police in Las Cruces are looking for a girl, hitchhiker. Half naked. Yeah, just in t-shirt and short pants.
You don't say.
Yeah.
Well, he's gonna protect her. He got her some jeans.
Are those the guys that are after you?
I think so.
Protect her real good, right?
Then he takes her back to his trailer.
You do for the time being. Come on in. Come on. Get ourselves caught.
Bill has a plan to infiltrate them.
Or you could go to the police. But you'd have a tough time accounting for those 6 days since it happened. On top of the fact that you're a foreigner with no ID. A lot happening, is there?
So they get Monica a wig, a disguise, and they pose as honeymooners.
Just beginning. For Christmas, you couldn't get a room in this town for love nor money.
Well, we aren't staying till Christmas. Just a couple.
Well, she sets them up in a room and immediately makes another phone call. And she brought them some coffee too. He doesn't trust it. And then the ambulance comes up again. I don't know if they're actually passed out or just pretending to have passed out. But our ambulance drivers come in and pick them up. Now they take off, but notice the truck there.
Iron Joe here, got a breaker on 1-5.
He's got all his trucker buddies monitoring the situation. 2 semis basically force the ambulance off the road.
What the hell are you guys, huh? Now you get out of here! You mother!
So they shoot one driver and then they try to get info out of this
All
one.
right, start talking. Who's interested in us? Where are you headed for, fella? Who's paying you for this move?
They put him in the freezer with the meat for a little while, cool him off, and then he spills everything.
Airbase,
What?
Roswell. Airbase,
Roswell? Roswell Air Base?
Dr. Jackson. I'm bringing meat for Dr. Jackson. And they don't ask any more questions.
Where are the documents?
So
please,
they drop
from
off the load.
Documents, there weren't any.
Cause of injury?
They were shot
And where?
outside Las Cruces.
Las Cruces? And you know the patients this far with those injuries?
How do I get to Jackson? The Dr. Jackson.
The 2 patients that they're referring to are the 2 drivers. They switch positions. So he explores this hospital.
Here we've got one of the largest organ banks in the world.
And so does she.
And we maintain a huge delivery
This is
network
Dr.
on an
Jackson.
international basis. We've got a whole fleet of jets and helicopters on the airfield.
They're
It could be a matter of
harvesting
hours
organs
or
is what
even
they're
minutes
doing.
whether drop in and say hello. Or if you need some help or information.
I'm looking for someone.
Really?
I think it was last Sunday he was brought in.
Do you know the name of the patient?
He isn't a patient. He's as healthy as you are.
We'll both have to go along with the plane. Dr. Jackson was sure you wouldn't say no.
They get stopped and they tell Monica and Bill they have to fly on a plane to take
One
some
of the
patients to
you
New
brought
York.
in was clinically
Here,
DOA.
take it
Yeah,
back.
I've got full limb.
I don't want it.
The organs were
Honestly.
completely worthless.
Dr. Jackson pulls out some photos and she knows that who she is.
I knew.
On the plane, she forces herself in the back where the quote-unquote patients are, and she finds Mike. And right after their reunion, they grab her and inject her. Bill is already on board, the truck driver, and he's been injected too. They arrive in New York, and Monica comes to a little bit and manages to escape. So Monica escapes and she ends up falling asleep in Central Park when somebody finds her, a police officer.
Not such a good idea, young girl. Spending the night in Central Park, sleeping in the rain. What's that matter?
You'll never make it.
Well, we'll give it the old college try.
130 pages.
They find her story a little unbelievable.
I'd appreciate you reading it through, and then you'll understand why we think your statements are highly improbable. Though not your personal story, but what you told us about this alleged organization that you seem to think is behind the whole business.
But guess who turned herself in? It's Dr. Jackson.
Hello. So I have you to thank for this free trip to New York.
Relax. We had Dr. Jackson flown in here last night.
Certainly.
So they use Monica and Dr. Jackson as
Patients. Now, I'd
basically
like to see
undercover
Mike,
people
and then we'll deal with the other.
to go in and infiltrate the hospital where the bodies are. They find Mike almost immediately, and per Dr. Jackson's orders, they take him out and put him in an ambulance.
I think you're doing
They go back in to get Bill.
This patient back in here.
That's not your decision to make. I've ordered him transferred. I want it done at once.
The nurse is right. I'm in charge of those patients. Get them both in my ambulance right away. For your husband, Mike.
I don't know where the police are in all this, but Dr. Jackson and Monica take off, followed by the bad ambulance from the hospital, or the clinic, or whatever the hell that organ harvest place is. They manage to lose the ambulance briefly, so she pulls over and drops her husband and Bill off, and then she takes off again. The two of them play bumper cars in the New York freeways. Which brings an end to Dr. Jackson.
Just very.
Anyway, Mike and Bill are okay.
See what I mean about irony? Well, we may meet again, perhaps.
Mike and Monica are going to go off with their lives. All right. Not much to look at here in this box, but let's talk about Spare Parts. This is a movie that I had on a beta tape. I got it from the video store I ended up working at a few years later called TNR Video. It was in Two Rivers, Wisconsin back in the 80s, late 80s. And the movie itself, the box, I think it was like a bigger box, and it showed like this cut up, almost like a paper doll type figure with, you know, the body parts removed, legs and arms and things. And it looked like it was going to be some, you know, nasty horror movie. It's not that, but it actually is a pretty decent film, I think. It's a German film that was filmed in the U.S. in Las Cruces, New Mexico, and parts of New York City. It's called FLEISCH, or FLEISCH, F-L-E-I-S-C-H. I don't know how to pronounce that. It's a German word. It means meat or flesh. And so anyway, we have this couple. It kind of reminds me of the movie Dying Room Only a little bit in the beginning, where we have this couple who are on their honeymoon, and they decide a honeymoon. I think they actually were students in Europe. They come to America for their honeymoon, and they're traveling through New Mexico, the Southwest, and they stop at the Honeymoon Inn. It's only $7.50 for a night, or maybe it was 2 nights for that. I don't know, cheap. And they go in there. The woman brings them some coffee and everything else. The next thing you know, this ambulance shows up, kidnaps Mike, and then they try to kidnap Monica, the wife. She gets away, and she's freaking out. What the hell's going on here? She goes back to the hotel. They were actually, Mike and Monica had been wandering out in the desert a little bit, just taking a walk when they got kidnapped. She goes back to the hotel, and the woman there pretends like she's never seen this woman before, doesn't know what she's talking about. So they think she's crazy. She thinks Monica is beside herself now. Something's going on here. So she flees, and she ends up hitching a ride with this truck driver. And then this ambulance is constantly pursuing her. The ambulance stops at a truck stop and says, yeah, there's this escaped woman from this mental hospital. We're trying to get her back. And the truck driver, Bill, who picked her up, doesn't quite believe the story either. So, but anyway, Monica tells him what really happened. So Bill decides to help her out. So Bill and Monica go disguised as a newly couple themselves. They go back to the Honeymoon Inn. Monica's wearing a wig and everything, and the woman welcomes them in. And then, of course, she makes a phone call, and the ambulance shows up again. Monica and Bill allow themselves to be taken to find out what's going on there. And it turns out what's happening is they're harvesting organs. Well, Bill has told all of his trucker friends to follow them, and they end up pulling the ambulance off the side of the road. They end up killing one of the ambulance drivers, and they bring the ambulance drivers to the hospital where they're supposed to drop off the meat, you know, so to speak. And then they find out Mike is in this hospital. Eventually, Monica poses as a nurse, but she gets caught. Monica and Bill get caught, and then they end up on a plane to New York City with Mike, and they're all going to be harvested, I guess. But when they get there, Monica kind of comes to from the shot they gave her, and she takes off running. She ends up going to the police in New York. And then Dr. Jackson, the woman who runs the whole organization, basically turned herself in, I guess. And she then goes undercover with Monica into the hospital. They rescue Bill and Mike, and they get chased by an ambulance. She drops off Bill, Mike, and Monica, and then she ends up driving off the side of a freeway and dies. And then we don't really find out if people got arrested or whatever, but we do see the cop with Mike, Bill, and Monica at the end, and I guess that's our movie, right? So anyway, yeah, it's a actually decent film. It's a made-for-television 1979 German film, like I said, called FLEISCH. It's got a nude scene by the main actress, Jutta something or other is her name. I don't know, Jutta Sperber or something like that. Turns out she was in some of those German schoolgirl report movies that I've reviewed already when she was very young, actually, like in the first one or two of them. But yeah, that's it. I don't know if you really, I guess you could kind of classify this as a horror movie. Like a little bit of nudity. I don't think there was any gore really. A couple people died, but it's a pretty intriguing film. I like it. And you can actually find it streaming on YouTube if you look for it. That's actually how I watched it. I didn't watch my DVD of it. I actually watched most of it on YouTube. There's actually, I think the German versions are on YouTube too, but the American English soundtrack version is up there as well. And that's, you know, if you speak English, that's what you want to watch. So anyway, check it out. It's even got the nude scene in it, by the way. So somebody managed to sneak by the YouTube censors, or I should say, nobody reported it yet. So anyway, that is Spare Parts. You can get this on multiple DVD compilations. It actually, I think, is by a DVD by itself too. It's not the best quality in any of them because it's a public domain thing at this point. So, but check it out. Let me know what you think about it. It's pretty cool. Find the link on YouTube. Watch it. Bye. Spare Parts. Leave some comments too.